Welcome to the World Football Summit podcast, the show for football industry leaders who want to stay ahead of the game. We bring you the latest insights, trends, and stories from the experts driving innovation and progress in sports business worldwide. Join us as we dive deep into the ideas and initiatives transforming the world of football. From sustainability and innovation to player development, fan engagement, and everything in between. Our goal is to unite the global football industry and drive positive change and progress. Hello guys, welcome to another episode of the World Football Summit podcast. I'm your host, Jaime, CMO at World Football Summit. It seems everything related to the world of web3 is ready to make a comeback, and I really wanted to understand where the space is heading. This is why I'm thrilled to welcome a true expert in the field to the show today. Berisha, the man behind the Sporting Crypto newsletter and the Sporting Crypto podcast, is our guest on the show. Pet and I discussed the current state of Web3 in sports, what went wrong in 2022, and what needs to be true for it to be a reality that truly changes football. We also cover examples of how the best brands are working with Web3, including Nike or Manchester United. This conversation goes straight into it, and I hope you get great value from it. Before we go into it though, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast on your platform of choice and share it with your industry colleagues. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, where every week we send updates, trends, and everything that goes on at our events. You can find the link in the show notes. And if the Web3 space is of any interest, I definitely recommend you check out everything Pet is doing, as he talked to many of those who are driving the Web3 space forward. And he is also able to explain complex concepts in a simple way. Finally, remember, 2024 is going to be a busy one with World Football Summit, as we have events in London, Mexico, Sevilla. You can check it all out on our website, and hopefully we'll meet you there. Nothing else from my side. I really hope you enjoyed this episode with Berisha from Sporting Crypto. Welcome to the World Football Summit podcast. I'm a big fan of Sporting Crypto, the work you do with the podcast. It's great to have you on the show, really. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for your far too kind words.
Okay, before we go into an interesting conversation about Web3, about crypto, about everything related to that space in sports, I was wondering if you can introduce yourself. And, I always like to ask my guests, why is it that you do what you do?
So I have always been a big sports fan, very passionate about sports, and I kind of fell into the Web3 world accidentally through production, actually, media production, which I think people that watch the Sporting Crypto content or read the newsletter won't be surprised to hear that I've got a background in that kind of world. I used to produce quite a big podcast called Blockchain Insider from 2017 to 2020. When crypto as a market was far, far smaller, there was a lot less going on. There was only a few projects that you had to keep an eye on. And I always say that now there's more projects happening on an Ethereum layer 2, like Polygon or Arbitrum or one of those, than there was in the entirety of crypto in 2017. So there was a lot less to keep your eyes and ears on, which was, I think, a blessing. I think now it's very difficult to keep on top of everything, even if it's your full-time job, as it is for me. And in kind of 2021, when crypto was getting hot again, I was doing a lot of contracting work in production, but also in kind of consulting on the growth and go-to-market side. And as that kind of 12-month period between the middle of 2020 and 2021 went on, my work started to skew more and more crypto, and kind of the inbound and calls I was getting was skewing again more towards this world. And I'd always had the idea of doing something towards sports and Web3, but there was never really enough to write about. And I joined Copper 90 on a contractual basis in the middle of 2021. And I got to peer behind the curtain of how kind of sports business worked. I was kind of taken aback by how little the industry knew about what they were getting themselves into, to be honest with you, from a football perspective. There was a lot of appetite and a lot of hunger to do stuff in Web3, but there was not very much knowledge or understanding of what this was. And so you had someone in Web3 selling someone in football, and each party didn't understand the other. So you had people in Web3 not understanding the football industry, and people in the football industry not understanding the risks of crypto, the potential of crypto to some extent as well. And I think that just made for a very bad mix between that period and probably the 2.5 years later. And so the first couple of months I had at Copper were really I had so much inbound from people all over the world wanting to do some crazy and fantastic things. And I kind of started to sit down and write about what I thought about these things, and that kind of swiftly turned into the newsletter because I was like, well, maybe someone wants to read what I think. From kind of September 2021 to the end of that year, we grew to about 400 subscribers. And what I noticed was we were being subscribed to by quite influential people in the industry. And I was like, well, okay, there might be something here, right? And as the crypto market exploded in January 2021, we grew very quickly as well. We grew to about 1,000 subscribers in Q1. And by the end of the year in 2022, we had about 2,000 subscribers. And fast forward to now, Q1 2024, we're almost at kind of 3,500. So we're seeing really, really good growth, regardless of what the market's doing, which is, again, a really good sign. We're not kind of beholden to crypto going up or crypto going down, which it so often does, which is really refreshing, to be honest, because I know a lot of companies, whether it's in media or just like product, rely on the market doing well. And I think our analysis via the newsletter, via the podcast, has shown that you can create kind of sustainable offerings without having to rely on the market going and doing well. So yeah, that's kind of the journey. Sporting Crypto has grown to become beyond the newsletter. We do the podcast that's been out for about 6 months. When this goes out, we'll have released our final episode in late February, which is great, of season 1. And we'll come back for season 2 in the second half of 2024. We also do events. So we've had events, in New York and London predominantly, but we're doing one at the end of February in Barcelona. If people want to come to that, if this goes out in time, we're doing ones in New York at the first week of April, Dubai in the middle of April, and then probably Berlin and London in June as well. So if you want to get involved in any of those as a sponsor, a partner, or just an attendee, just reach out. I'm sure Amy will mention where to reach me in the description. But I also do a bunch of consulting and advisory work as well, which is quite cool. I've had the pleasure of being able to work with some really big Web2 brands and also some kind of small and scrappy and fast-growing Web3 brands, 3 native companies, which has given me the kind of ability to stay on the bleeding edge to some extent, but also understand how enterprise and corporate works and how they need to operate. And I've also been a mentor at some of the accelerators, Techstars in Dublin, and also Outlier Ventures accelerator programs as well. So been able to have quite a big breadth of stuff happen in this space across Web3 and sports.
You're busy man. I mean, events, the content, which is great. You just broke my heart, by the way, taking that long of a break for the podcast, which I understand. I mean, but consulting.
The good news is I think season 2 might have 18 episodes.
Okay.
And so we might be there for 36 of the 52 weeks of the year.
Nice.
For next time. So next time there'll only be a 15-week break, which I think is a bit more palatable. But I think it gives it a bit more novelty, right? I think if we did it every 2 weeks all year round, we'd struggle to keep the quality of guests. We'd struggle to keep the quality of production. So having that good break maybe is for the better.
Sure. And I was going to say, I mean, the quality of the guests you have and the content is, that's what I liked about it. And not only that, I mean, it's your ability to kind of like explain these concepts that it seems, as you said before, in the sports industry doesn't really understand, but explain them in a very simple way so one can understand. We're going to get into that a little bit later. No, before that though, I'm going to ask a question out of self-interest, I admit, which is, what have you learned about creating content? Growing the newsletter, the podcast. Any particular lessons?
So I have to be honest. This is the first newsletter I've ever done. Right? Because my background was in, as I said, podcasting and even events, to be honest with you, helping produce live content at events. I think what I've learned most from this specific piece of media is that with B2B, there is very little kind of growth hacking you can do. And I'm sure you'll know that as well. A lot of it is word of mouth, which is fine. And there's very little you can do to really accelerate growth to a mass. I think with B2C, you can do ads, you can do lots of growth hacking. And with B2B, you have to be a little bit smarter. So I've kind of learned also with that in mind that the quantity of our readership and consumership is one thing, and that kind of interests advertisers. But really what the selling point always is the quality of our leadership. So when we show the brands that are reading, when we show the brands that are clicking through 100 times in the last 6 months to our email, it's kind of scary, the quality of those brands. And I don't know if that says anything about the quality of our content or the fact that maybe we're one of the only people covering this niche. It's probably more likely the answer. I don't think that many other people are doing Web3 sports content, which is, which I guess is to our benefit. But I think one of the things we've learned is to just also double down on what's working. And so what has worked for us is LinkedIn. And so we've been posting every day from my personal account and trying to grow the Sporting Crypto page to the point where it can kind of live on its own, which won't be for another 6 to 12 months, I don't think, as we're only at like 550 followers there. But moving away from Twitter and pushing hard on LinkedIn, pushing hard on in real life events. I was really, really shocked by the appetite that we've had for real life events. Like that was one of the things that really was a learning point for me. I was like, we'll do one in New York and see how many people come. We did our first one in April 2023 in New York during NFT NYC, or maybe 2022 rather. I thought, wow, how many people are going to come? We invited about 200. I thought maybe 40 would come. We had almost 125 people there.
Wow.
And so that for me was a real light bulb moment of learning, like, wow, people want to be in real life talking to other people about this niche. I think one of the other things I learned is I thought our audience would be just people in Web3 and sport. But it started to expand to people in gaming, people at other enterprise levels, people at big brands who have maybe an adjacent interest in sport. So I'll give you an example. I'm not necessarily saying these guys are reading because that would, GDPR breach, but Coca-Cola have a big interest in sport, right? So do PepsiCo and so do Budweiser. All of these brands are types of brands that might be reading our content because they want to be kept up to date in what's going on the sponsorship side or the partnership side, on the fan activation side as well. And also blockchains, for example, who want to have an interest in what's going on in this space as well. They all see this as a big opportunity for them to increase usage. And then the layer above that in the cloud services infrastructure, right? A lot of those businesses, the blockchains that are using their cloud space are interested in sports. So of course, if you're an account manager at one of these cloud services providers, you will go and try and keep abreast with what's going on in this world. So our focus was very direct, deep and narrow. We've had high penetration there in sports and Web3, but we've kind of accidentally found that we've seen lots of big brands, enterprise and start to read as well, which has been good. We've gotten some really good perspectives from people in fashion and gaming and whatever else. And that's been really interesting as well. That's been a real learning point for me to have to learn about gaming and fashion and, stuff that I've never really written about or had an interest in beyond being a consumer.
Yeah. To your point, I think two keywords there. First, I think first engagement, no? I think the key to measure success there is engagement, probably, but also relevance, I would say, is another keyword. Relevance in the audience that you're reaching, relevance in the content that you're creating for them. At the end of the day, that's something that I've learned with this podcast and with the newsletter that we also have, and is that it's not really much about clicks or anything or downloads or whatever. It's just how long people actually find your content useful. And as you said, that actually is going to fuel organic growth.
Yeah. I always say as well, like, we do not care if it's 1,000 people subscribing or listening. And it's all just people buying a Dogecoin on Coinbase.
Definitely.
Right. Like that's just not what we're looking to build. And so one person working at a sports organization that is a key decision maker or an exec is more important than 1,000 crypto traders.
Exactly. That's what I meant as well. Right. Anyway, but so thank you for that. I think we can get into it, and I want to understand really the current state of Web3, everything related to Web3 in sports, no? But first, I think we need to go back to 2022 because that was a rough year. I know things are coming back, but what went wrong in 2022 after a spectacular growth or interest, if you will, during 2021? You saw a big drop in 2022. Now it seems it's coming back again, but if we can learn from the mistakes of the past, what's your analysis there?
I think that the market got really, really hot from all angles, right? I think that was obviously a predominantly bad thing, right? It got too hot too quickly. And from a sports perspective, it was so over financialized and the offerings, the propositions were just not fit for purpose. There was no product market fit really beyond, So Rare and Top Shot that had seen some kind of success on the consumer side where actual consumers were buying So Rare and Top Shot NFTs. They didn't care that they were to do with crypto. They just liked the product. And so we had some form of product market fit. But I still think, and I always say that sports probably has the biggest product market opportunity when it comes to doing something on Web3 or using Web3 technology. But the execution has been the worst out of any industry that I've seen. The deals have been driven by commercial aspects really only. They have been driven by salespeople selling sponsorships and sponsorships that basically don't engage fans for the most part. So there's been a lot wrong. And I think what I'm seeing now, even with the market heating up again, I'm seeing less euphoric, let's throw money at this again from the blockchains for sure. There is like a lot less of that. I think a lot of the sports organizations are still trying to take advantage of that, but the blockchains are just not in the position to spend in the same way that they were. And even if they do have the cash, they know that the ROI is not there. You're not going to see $20 million a year sponsorship on shirt deals for sure. Like, crypto.com sponsoring the World Cup. I don't think stuff like that is going to happen, especially as those companies are starting to compete with more legitimate means of having exposure to crypto, right? We've seen with the Bitcoin ETFs now in the States, there's already ETFs in Canada. There's going to be similar kind of products in Europe. If for anyone that doesn't know, exchange traded fund or an ETF is just a regulated way for someone to get exposure to an asset. And so you have a gold ETF, a silver ETF. It means you can have exposure to the asset without actually holding a bullion of gold in your back garden. And the same has been done for Bitcoin. And the inflows of capital we're seeing from institutions there are pretty phenomenal. And now fast forward 3 years, you're going to have Ethereum ETFs, you're going to have other crypto ETFs, you're going to have baskets of goods. I think within 5 years, you're going to have something the equivalent of an S&P 500 for crypto. Maybe it'll be a 50 or a 5 or a 10 or a 15. And there's going to be regulated ways of getting exposure to these assets. And for the foremost part, that is only going to matter to institutions and funds. But eventually, when those things are included in pensions, when those things are included in your everyday investment accounts, when those things are going to be introduced in your everyday investment accounts, those things are going to matter more. And you're going to have traders looking at the exchanges, of course. But I think consumers, for the most part, unless you've already got a Coinbase account, I think you're going to be using more regulated means, right? And I think Coinbase is one of the most regulated, if not the most regulated ways of getting into crypto. But an ETF is a game changer, I think. And so I think we'll see other forms of kind of sponsorship and advertising, something more holistic through a BlackRock or a Van Eck, where they're sponsoring sports tournaments or teams and trying to have part of that offering be a crypto advertisement. I don't think we're going to see as many crazy deals as we did for sure. So that's one thing I've seen. If there is some of those crazy deals, what I've seen is the blockchains want bang for their buck for sure. And they want to be integrated on every technical level. They want exclusivity and they want to be able to build proper infrastructure. So we're talking loyalty programs and so on and so forth in that, guys. So loyalty is definitely the hottest part of the market right now. And I think we're seeing a lot of sports brands look at the kind of blockchain identity or loyalty side of things as well. Like we've seen with Starbucks and Lufthansa, Nike and Adidas, sorry, that's a very American way of saying it stupidly. Adidas, there is a lot of appetite in that realm and we're seeing more and more of that. And I think that's going to translate to sport as well.
I think so too. And to your point, I think that the key here is that it becomes embedded in the culture in a way, so it's kind of like part of your everyday quality dynamics for consumers to actually accept it. But I'm thinking, so you just mentioned the word loyalty there. I had a conversation once with Michael Broden on the podcast a couple of months ago. And he was saying that the traditional sports business model is outdated and that everything related to, call it Web3 NFTs was kind of like, a big opportunity. And you just mentioned it before to create new revenue streams. So do you think digital assets is a way to evolve the traditional sports business model?
I have to kind of disagree there. I agree with the first part, which is I think whether it's outdated or needs innovation is definitely up for discussion. I think it's definitely leaning towards being bang on. I think if you think about what's going on with broadcast globally in football, particularly in Europe, is a big red flag. If you consider a lot of private equity coming into the sport as well. I don't think that's a red flag, but I think it's a nod to people in finance thinking that they can take assets, rehabilitate them and make a profit from them, which I don't think is going to be the case without major surgery in the way that these models work. To some extent, football ownership is a loss leader, right? It's very difficult to make money when there is promotion and relegation, when tickets can only go so high, when broadcast revenues are plateauing, merchandise sales are gobbled up by suppliers. Also, the length of contracts that's happened sometimes in football is so long, whether it's Adidas and Arsenal or Emirates and Arsenal, or, it's very well known that the Arsenal Emirates Stadium signed a deal with the caterers at the very start of the Emirates era. And that's only up for renewal, I think, soon. And so for 20 years or whatever it was, there's been the same rate. Whereas if you look at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with their new stadium, the amount of revenue they're driving through match day food and drink sales is gargantuan compared to a lot of the other clubs that have long-term catering deals. So there are some quirks there where normally in business where you have deals that renew a little bit more frequently, which can give you a little bit more price elasticity. In football, you could be tied down to a deal that becomes cheap for the buyer in 5 years, right? If you sign a 7-year deal in 4 years' time, you might be being paid as much as like a relegation candidate in a league. And so I think the lack of smoothness in those deals, I saw someone say that one of the reasons football is a really appealing market for PE is because of the length of the deals and the length of the broadcast deals. And I thought, well, actually, I'm not sure the length of the deals is a positive. So, I think there is some outdatedness there in terms of how that's done. And again, I'm not an expert there. That's just my view from the outside. I think it's a bit strange. The way that merchandising is done, I think is a bit strange in terms of the revenue splits and maybe the lack of greenfield stuff that clubs themselves make without a specific supplier is a bit strange. We've become accustomed to like an Adidas Arsenal shirt or a Puma Arsenal shirt, but like the margins that Arsenal could make on selling half the amount of merchandise if it was made by themselves might be higher. I don't know. Like there should be some revolutionizing there, I guess. For me, on the Web3 front, I just don't see it as a game changer for revenue at all. We've seen some fleeting examples of it with Socios and so on and so forth. But like all those deals are being renegotiated. All those deals are not yielding the same revenue. I think Web3 is truly another means of engagement and marketing really for sports companies. They're not going to be able to sell in the same way that a Nike does or whoever other brand does or a game does maybe. I think this is like a new iteration of social media for a sports team. And a sports team doesn't expect to make money from Twitter or YouTube. I always think it's mad that Sky Sports and football teams put ads up on their YouTube channel. Like, why? It's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah,
you want people to view this.
Yeah,
you have broadcast deals and licensing deals. You want people to view this. It's some of the things just are crazy to me. So I think there should be an investment in this technology to innovate and engage rather than accrue revenue, which is a bit backward. They should be looking at this as the next iteration of social media on the internet, in the sense of it being another funnel for acquiring and engaging their fan base. And again, look, I've said a lot of stuff there, so I'll pass back over to you. And some of the stuff on the length of deals and merchandising, I think, is definitely out of my domain. Just speaking from the outside in, I'm sure a lot of people will correct me. But from a Web3 perspective, the fact that a lot of sports teams still think that they can sell digital assets and make a considerable amount of money is they're going to be in for a shock. I think it has to be part of something more holistic, bigger. We talk about Spotify and Barcelona and that crazy deal where they say they have 300 million fans, and they only have data on 3 million. Well, Manchester United through free NFTs have got 1 million plus or nearly 1 million on-chain fans in a year. And Barcelona only have 3 million data available in 3 million over the last 20 years. That to me is insane. And there's a plethora of reasons. The cost of managing data sets that big, the costs of managing email lists that big, the logistics around that, all those things are really difficult. I do think blockchain can solve for a lot of that. It's going to be interesting to see more and more sports teams accrue these kind of on-chain audiences, which just basically means audiences that have a blockchain underwriting it, whether it's through giving away free NFTs or paid NFTs or tokens, whatever it may be.
Yeah, but to your point, I think the key word you mentioned there, or the concept, is engagement, really. That's what you need. It's not, that's what happened. That's what we were mentioning before. No, that's probably what happened or what went wrong in 2022. It was kind of a focus on just monetizing and getting money out of it. Whereas this is an opportunity to kind of create a more direct connection with your fans, which my team are running. But the more engaged you have your fans, or the more engagement you have with the fans, the more revenue you can drive. But it's just that it's not your immediate focus. It's probably going to be a more long-term play, right? It kind of goes back to once heard a sentence that I liked, which is, NFTs at the end of the day are content, and content drives discussion, which creates engagement, which ultimately will drive to revenue. But again, it's not the beginning, right? It's not the initial mindset that you have. In that sense, I'm wondering, do you think the key to success then is to have the ability to combine physical and digital experiences? Because at the end of the day, sport is a physical experience, if you will, at least for now. So I'm just thinking, well, how can you translate or how can you combine a digital experience with a physical one? That I think if you are able to adapt that, you should be able to create a compelling program.
Yeah. So first of all, I think the kind of NFTs as content thing is true, but it also kind of downplays what this technology can do, right?
Yeah.
So NFTs can be anything, right? Any form of content could be tokenized and turned into a non-fungible token. And so an example of something that accrues a lot of value is like digital art. If a very famous artist creates digital art and wants to make those unique, put those on chain via an NFT, then they can accrue a lot of value, right? An NFT can also be a free token that shows you participated on this podcast, right? So whilst both those things drive discussion, of course, they are for different audiences and for different reasons. There are different goals for those two pieces of content, right? In the same way that you can have a film that's directed and put at the Cannes Music Festival, and you can also have a vlog that someone shoots on their phone and puts on YouTube. The internet or cameras can produce both of those pieces of content, but they are for two different reasons entirely. And I think NFTs as well can be anything, right? They can be the loyalty programs, right? They can evolve. They can be pieces of art. They can be pieces of content, whatever they may be. On the physical side, I think there are two key distinctions, right? One is, how do you get Web3 to connect to in-person events or on-field events, or give you reward and delight your users in a physical way? The second side of that is putting physical assets on chain. And so there's a big trend now coming where a really good example of it is Courtyard.io, who allowed you to trade, to send in like a Magic of the Gathering or Pokemon card or whatever it may be. And they do a 3D scan. They put that on their front end marketplace. They put it in a vaulted third party stored Brinks safe. Okay. And they put that card on chain. And now on the front end, that is the ownership, right? If you buy that NFT, the Pokemon card, you now have the ownership of that. And so if you want to take the physical, you can burn your NFT and they'll send it to you in a mailbox. That eliminates all the third-party kind of risks. So if you imagine traditionally, if I'm selling you a Pokemon card or a football jersey and it's expensive, you have to trust that it's real. It could be damaged in the post. It could be fake. The payment could be fraudulent. My card could be, defrauded online. Whereas if you're utilizing a smart contract that has also already verified the authenticity of that card or item, and it's in a third-party storage facility, the unlock in liquidity, trust, safety, and authenticity via smart contracts and some storage and putting things on chain, it's just unbelievable. Also, if you are a collector or want to buy and sell these things, like having these things in your room versus having them on chain or in a storage facility doesn't really make a difference. And so they've seen a bunch more liquidity than you'd see in like eBay or whatever it may be, because the transfer of ownership is instantaneous. There is a huge, huge, huge advantage to having things on chain. And I think more and more physical assets will go on chain for the same reason. Now, I don't know if there's a big market for that type of thing in football, but in terms of memorabilia, in terms of anything sporting goods, that could be an interesting angle. The other angle of connecting Web3 to on-field or in-person experiences is the other side of the kind of physical link. So those are the two key pillars I see when people talk about, well, Web3 needs to not just be digital, which is to some extent total really, right? Like people spend so much of their time online now, and how much money is spent on Fortnite and Roblox and so on and so forth. And you see stuff with the Apple Vision Pro and Meta Quest, and like how much more high fidelity technology is getting in general and gaming is getting in general with with Unreal Engine and so forth, the idea there'll be less demand for digital assets in the future, whether they're on-chain or off-chain, is just really crazy. I think there has to be room for a rental economy. Not everyone will want to own their digital content, but I think things are going to increasingly get digital, and the line between physical and digital will blur with extended reality, with augmented reality, with all of these technologies kind of coming to the fore. And so I think short term, yeah, that kind of physical link will matter. But in 20 years where you can sit in London and watch the Super Bowl on a 16K screen and it feels like you're in the stadium, we're really not far away from stuff like that, right? The kind of barriers between physical and digital are going to decrease. Again, I don't think we're ever going to replicate one for one the kind of in-stadium experience, but it makes total sense that we are going to be increasingly living in a digital world, because why wouldn't we? That is the trend. The internet has only been alive for 30 years from a consumer perspective. In 30 years' time, what it might look like is going to be kind of alien to us, and you'd have to bet that it's going to be more digital. And so I think the idea that things have to link to the physical is overblown to some extent. But I think if you are thinking about that kind of link, those two worlds, are those two sides of things, of the coin, is where you should look.
I think it's a matter of mindset at the end of the day. I think there's so much focus on trying to differentiate the physical with the digital. At the end of the day, it's an experience. Doesn't really matter where. The key to that, to your point, is reducing friction. As the technology evolves, costs are lower. You're going to reduce friction, and you're going to see higher engagement, which I think is going to drive more experiences and people trying it out. No? But I'm thinking, you mentioned before that you didn't see that being a case for football. So what needs to be true for, let's say web3 becoming I want to call it a key player in football? I don't know if there's any ideas that come to mind other than reducing friction.
I think there has to be less the push on the financialization side of things. I think whenever there's a good idea internally, the reaction is kind of like, great, but how does that make money? But like, you would never ask a marketing team that. Do you know what I mean? You would never ask a content team, how is that video going to make us money? Or how is that marketing campaign going to make us money? No, it's a cost to your business, because you're engaging your audience, you're building brand equity, whatever other goals you've got. And I think the same viewpoint has to be for Web3 in the short term. I think that right now what I'm seeing a lot of is football teams trying to get sponsors to fit the bill, which again makes sense. I think it has some of its downsides still, because what happens if you're no longer with that sponsor, and how much power does that sponsor have in how that technology is built and how seamless it is? Does that sponsor have a deep understanding of what your fans want? Yeah. So I think football is really, really far behind generally in data. Sports in general is really far behind in data, CRM, loyalty. I mean, I'm shocked sometimes when I hear some of the things that I do about how little data sports have of the fans that they claim they have, right? It's pretty insane. In terms of engagement and loyalty as well, there is basically nothing there for fans. And anything that's been done has been done by random third parties that have nothing to do with the sports or the federations or the clubs. Even, ticketing experiences are terrible. So the consumer facing experience, apart from the match going experience, is bad in football.
Yeah.
Like straight up. Like it's at best a 5 out of 10. Content is bad or underutilized. The way social is done, the way content strategy, marketing strategies, loyalty, data, pretty much everything apart from on the pitch, which is where 99% of the funding goes to, is done really badly. And I think that's because the kind of where the money goes, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a long way to go. There needs to be more resources available. And I don't know if that's going to come anytime soon.
Yeah, the problem, as I said, is the mindset. No. Teams have kind of like a lot of pressure to generate revenues in the short term, because the marketing guy at a club doesn't really know if it's going to be there for what year.
Exactly. I always say this, like people saying, why did some of these deals get signed? It's like, well, that commercial director might not be here by the end of that deal.
There you go. But there are clubs that are doing things well. And a couple of episodes ago, I was looking into where I was actually summarizing an awesome article you wrote for your newsletter, which is describing Manchester United's Web3 strategy. And I was wondering, if having here, it would be a good opportunity to kind of like have an overview. If you could explain it and, of what they're doing and kind of like best practices. Doesn't have to be, I think people should check it out on the newsletter, but if you can give us a brief overview, I think it would be useful.
So, yeah, a quick overview. Manchester United partnered with Tezos, the layer 1 blockchain, did something quite interesting where they did a free to claim digital collectible called the kind of Red Devil keys or the Manchester United keys. And I think they had almost 1 million claims, which was quite cool. Built a really outstanding and big Discord community running into the lead up to that and also off the back of it. And when they gave away those keys, they also did a paid version, some United Red Devils of varying rarity. I think they were £30 each, which all sold out. And it was a great success. And off the back of that, this season, they've done a free-to-claim digital collectible for every home game, men and women's, which has also seen in the tens of thousands of claims per game. And so they've slowly started to generate interest and build an on-chain community that they're then funneling into Discord. And they want to do a lot of other really interesting things, I think. But that is like the first step, right? Just trying to see what the appetite is out there. It doesn't have to be paid. It can be a free-to-claim campaign and you can see what the uptake is like. And, you know, for them to have almost 1 million claims or unique claims, whatever it may be, I think that's really impressive. And I'm quite interested to see where they go with this, what the next step is for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, as you said, their mindset, going back to what we were mentioning before, is different. They're testing. They're looking to see the adoption of their fans and how actually they accept or they embrace this new technology. And they're probably helping them understand it better, you know? So, and that's also key because when you get these new technologies, you really need to help fans understand them better, no? Other brands that are doing stuff well, I would say Nike is doing things very well. Would you say they're the ones that are doing it best? If so, why do you think they're good?
I think the main reason is when I see brands do stuff in Web3, the worst examples, whether it's Pepsi or Budweiser, where they tried to sell like a collection of NFTs for no reason other than to generate revenue, has been when they have not taken the ethos of their brand and superimposed it onto Web3, their Web3 proposition. So if you think about Nike and Tiffany's and Lufthansa and Starbucks, like what does Starbucks do well? They have a loyalty program with 50 million people. And through that loyalty program, there is more cash flowing through that app than a lot of banks in America. Crazy, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So why don't we supercharge that with a Web3 loyalty solution that sits adjacent to our loyalty app and engage our customers that want to be engaged more?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about Nike, what are they known for? World-class apparel for people for sportswear and also for people that, you know, that kind of more fashion side of things as well, the more fashionable Nike trend over the last like 20 years outside of sportswear becoming more a leisure brand than a fashion brand. But what are they really good at? They're really good at advertising and copy and really strong campaigns that really mean something and stand for something. And so what have they done with their Web3 program? They've tried to be best in class with every aspect of it. They've tried to remain true to the kind of physical side of their brand as well, which is connecting, as we said, the physical products that they are best known for with the Web3 side of things. And it's worked really well so far. Now, the scalability, where that will land, who knows, but let's see. But so far, they have done a great job of combining pure digital assets, free collectibles, claimables with paid for physical goods through Web3, through the Web3 kind of membership that they've created, but being able to buy seamlessly on a Web2 app, like their sneakers app as well. And they've also teased like gaming announcements as well, trying to partner with EA to have Web3 apparel that can go into it, into EA games. They've also partnered with Fortnite in a really, really interesting way. That I think they've been the king of abstracting the Web3 experience to be a lot more easier. I think their Fortnite example, you could connect your Epic Games account with your Nike Web3 ID, your Nike.swoosh ID. And if you'd gone into the Airforia Nike world in Fortnite, you were able to claim a digital collectible with your .swoosh account. And so because Fortnite don't want NFTs in their game, they've abstracted that kind of experience. And it's done really well. They had loads and loads of claims. You can't really argue against those numbers. So they are doing everything in a very authentic and smart way. The experience and the execution is very, very good. As I said, there's very little friction. And they've stayed true to their brand. They've not just said, here's 10,000 NFTs that you could buy for $50 each that have our logo on it. No, there is a concerted effort to do something that is going to stick around and have a more they call it as they are home for virtual assets. That's what they want to make it. They are not just selling virtual assets. They are building the foundations for the home for their virtual assets. So that's the main difference, really. A lot of the projects in the sport and even brand side have been one and dones, and there's not been that foundational house to build. And that's been a big miss.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, the key for them is they've been true with their brand, but then they've also been humble enough to understand the space, not impose their objectives as a brand, let's say. I mean, so obviously a brand wants to generate revenues, wants to test new things, right? But first they said, let's understand, for example, let's go into Fortnite. People in Fortnite don't want NFTs. Let's play around with it. Let's see how, what the audience there really wants, and then how can we adapt our offering to that. No? And finish off, I don't know, because you've mentioned a lot of brands, and I don't know if there's any other, call it best in class examples that, people who are curious about the space want to check out that you want to mention or you want to make reference to.
Not really. I think I've used up all my good examples. I mean, Reddit outside of sport have done a fantastic job. For those of you who don't know, the Reddit collectible avatars program, on Reddit, you're able to customize your profiles with an avatar. They put those on chain. They've seen 35 million plus claims and sales, which is pretty incredible, from over 20 million unique customers. Why? Because suddenly, by putting those avatars on chain, you can now trade them with your friend. Overnight, light bulb moment, just simple. Simply using one aspect of Web3, whoever came up with that was a genius. And it's worked amazingly, right? You cannot argue with those numbers. 20 million unique claims is no, it's not a joke number even for Web2. So yeah, that's the one example I'd give.
Yeah, not only simplicity, but also it reduces friction, which is what we were mentioning before, right? At the end of the day, it's easy, just like that, no? But this has been fun, but I want to take the opportunity to ask a couple of rapid fire questions just to finish this conversation. Sure. I'm going to start with, if you let me, I'm going to steal a couple of questions that you usually ask a guest. First off, I want to understand, what do you believe is currently overhyped in the world of Web3?
Overhyped gaming, probably. I think I go through periods of thinking it's underhyped and overhyped, but I think recently a little bit overhyped. I think people think that every single gaming project is going to do really, really well. And I think there aren't enough, especially the ones that are very, very Web3 centric. So yeah.
Okay. And what about any space that you're most excited about?
I would have to say the on-chain asset side of things, like real world assets being put on chain. I think I'm very excited about that outside of sport. So yeah, that would be mine.
Let's see how that evolves, definitely. If you were to choose a sports-related moment or experience in history, all right, there's no boundaries here, to mint as an NFT, which one would it be?
I don't know. Well, that's such a hard one. I really don't know the answer to that. I was there for do you remember the Jack Wilshere goal at the Emirates? The tiki-taka.
Yeah, okay, yes, that was an amazing goal. Yeah, with Giroud and, that amazing goal.
I was there. And I was also there for the Giroud scorpion kick goal.
Wow.
So maybe something like that where you're like, in 20 years, you can say, I was there when that happened and whatever. So one of those.
Oh, that was wow. I forgot about that goal. That was such an amazing goal. Good one. Good one. Okay. And well, last year in World Football Summit, we launched a rebrand. And one of the, let's say, underlying themes that we have there is that we need a football industry that, let's say, embraces innovation, that commits to excellence, that embraces sustainability across its three pillars, call it financial, social, environmental. So I'm just thinking, if I were to ask you to define the football you want or the football you need, which is kind of like the claim that we made up for that, or to summarize that, if you could do that in 1 or 2 sentences, how would you define the football you want or you need?
Well, I don't know. It's difficult, right? Like football has gone so far down the line of being not a public good anymore. It's difficult to revert to that model. But I mean, I think ideally for me, football clubs shouldn't be owned and run like businesses, right? But that's just not something that's going to happen. Commercially, we've gone well down that road, and I don't think there's any going back. But I mean, I really think fans should have ownership in teams. I think there should be a lot more accountability for the larger federations like UEFA and FIFA. I think the football has, as a product, started watering down the most important parts of it, which is, the players and the fans. We saw during COVID how important part of the product fans are. And we know footballers are the most important part of the product, but we see agents take huge fees. And how does that make any sense? We see referees paid 80,000 euros a year when they have such a huge impact on the product and such a huge impact on the commercials of teams, Like if you make 90 errors a year And without those errors, you go up 2 places in the league that could be worth €3 million for a team. But we're putting it in the hands of people that are not compensated enough, not trained enough. And there is a bit of a dereliction of duty from those who decide that an operator as important as the official is not as skilled in comparison to the footballers. Footballers have gotten better over the last 15 years. Officials have not.
Yeah.
I think we've also, with some of the rule changes, taking the spirit out of the game. I mean, if you think about the handball rule and someone could kick the ball at your hands and the edge of the area and it's a penalty. That doesn't make any sense, right? There should be unless the ball is going towards goal, there shouldn't be a penalty. We're talking about blue cards now. It's just nonsense. The rules itself right now needs to be adjusted and fixed so the players on the pitch can win the match and not officials deciding the match because someone's kicked the ball at someone's hand at the edge of the area or whatever it may be, or we're disallowing a goal because the goalkeeper's been touched in the build-up. And, it's just completely nonsensical. I'm a firm believer in technology being a good thing for the sport, but the way that VAR is executed by very incompetent people is so outstanding to me. But it makes sense, right? Like you see it with, if someone works at our hospital for 20 years and has never used a computer to fill out paperwork, if you start making them fill out that paperwork digitally, they're going to struggle for the first 10 years, 5 years, maybe, whatever it may be. Same thing here. You've put a match official who probably doesn't use a computer in their daily work in charge of video technology. Just completely crazy. Like, would you do that at the World Football Summit? Like, you've suddenly gone from paper to digital? You wouldn't ask someone who's been doing paper products for 10 years to go and build the website. So why are we doing that in football? Hire digitally native people who have video skills to run VAR, not the officials. Just crazy. So there are so many things wrong with football at the moment, but I think it's the same said for every sport and every aspect of life, right? We can always improve and some things don't make sense. But yeah, let's see where it goes.
I think at the end of the day, what I took from your answer, which I appreciate, is going back to the essence of involving the fan, really having rules that don't disturb the game, let's say, right? They're not obstacles. Technology that makes it easier, but not complicates it. Anyway, but this has been fun. Well, thanks for your time. I don't know if you want to share where people can learn more about you. I highly recommend anybody listening out there to subscribe to the newsletter, to listen to the podcast, and even if you have to go back to season 1 and listen to a bunch of episodes, you're going to learn a lot from there. But any other place you want to send them to?
Yeah, so you can find us on sportingcrypto.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter directly via sportingcrypto.substack.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Pet Berisha, Berisha.
Well, Pet, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll have a round 2 somewhere in the future to for sure this space evolves.
For sure.
Right. Thank you, Pet.
Cheers.
There you have him, Pet Berisha from Sporting Crypto. That was a fun one. And, I think the expectations that I had definitely were met and even surpassed. So I want to thank Pet for that. Let's try to summarize kind of like the main learnings. First off, I think, as Pet said, sport enjoys the biggest opportunity when it comes to Web3. The problem is that up to this point, the execution has been very poor. And I think what needs to change, as he said, is the mindset. Focus more on loyalty rather than just monetizing any action that you do in Web3, right? Also, it helps to try to reduce friction, to help the fan understand the technology, to embrace the technology, to make it something that's going to be part of their day-to-day, right? And when you look at the best examples out there, Manchester United, as we discussed on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we reviewed here, is a prime example. Why? Because they're testing the appetite of their fans to embrace the technology and see the benefit from it, right? They're not really focused, at least in the short term, on creating revenues. They're really looking to understand where the space can take them, which I think is a difference that anybody out there looking to implement a Web3 strategy in their football property needs to understand, right? Or when you look at Nike, they're staying true to their brand, right? But they're also humble enough to understand the space, to adapt to the context of each initiative they're doing, right? So anyway, those are good examples. And finally, I just want to go back to what we're discussing about the football he wants and the football he needs. At the end of the day, football needs to go back to its essence, to involve fans, to empower them more. Look at the rules. Are they making the game more complex to follow? Is it easier for especially the younger generations to understand the different rules, not see as many interruptions, so how are we adapting to that? And also, of course, not forget about the players. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting answer that he gave. And overall, this was a very interesting conversation. And I want to understand if there's anything else that stood out to you. If so, make sure you reach out on social media. You know where to find us. And as I've said in the past, 2024 is going to be a very interesting year for World Football Summit, and we're probably going to be discussing web3 as the space evolves in our different events. Remember, we're going to have events in Sevilla, we're going to have events in London, Mexico, and anywhere the football world takes us, right? I hope you can join us. You can check everything out on our website. You can also subscribe to this podcast. You can share it with your industry colleagues. It helps us a lot. And make sure you check out our newsletter as well. Every week, we send out updates. We have trends, everything that really goes on in the industry. We share on the newsletter. So, help us reach a higher number of industry leaders out there just like you who want to learn more about the dynamics of the football industry. And nothing else from my side. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I definitely did. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.